Alaikum and good evening, everyone. So, we have completed the demo classes of Unani mentors. This is our first class, all right? In this lecture, we'll be studying about the basics of the abdomen. Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Moving on to the first slide. So, what is abdomen? Abdomen forms the lower part of the trunk. As we all know, that abdomen forms the lower part of the trunk. See, these are the body cavities in this particular slide. Anteriorly, we have thoracic cavity, abdominal cavity, and pelvic cavity. Whereas posteriorly, we have cranial cavity and spinal cavity. Among all these cavities, you can see that the abdominal cavity is the largest cavity, all right. This muscle is the diaphragm. Diaphragm separates thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, all right. So, abdominal cavity is the largest cavity, okay. Now, moving on to the next slide. The entire abdomen is divided into 9 quadrants. All right. See, if this is your abdomen, okay, if this is the clavicle, all right, there is a vertical line passing from the middle of the clavicle. All right. So, this line is called as mid clavicular line. ठीक है. Okay. Then below the costae, that is below the ribs, we have one horizontal line. This line is called as subcostal plane, or right. This is called as subcostal plane or transpyloric plane, or this is also called as plane of addition. All right. These vertical lines were the mid clavicular line, which is homologous to the mammary lines. And the next horizontal line, which runs between the two tubercles of the iliac crest, is the transtubercular plane. All right. So these four lines, that is the two vertical lines and the two horizontal line, divide the entire abdomen into 9 quadrants. We even call them as Pandora box. Pandora box means box of surprise. Okay. All right. So, why do we divide the abdomen into 9 quadrants? So that we can describe the location of viscera properly. All right. So, this region having the umbilicus is called as the umbilical region, and the region above this is the epi. Epi means above. Epigastric. This is hypogastric, below the gastric. The hypo means below. This region below the chondra. Chondra means ribs. Here we have ribs, below the ribs. So this is hypochondrium. All right. This is the right side. So right hypochondrium. Similarly, we have left hypochondrium on left side. This is the lumbar region. All right. Similarly, we have the left lumbar region. All right. This is the iliac region, the right iliac and the left iliac. So these were the nine quadrants of the abdomen. ठीक है. The organs which are there in the nine quadrants and the surgical aspect will be discussed when we discuss the all this one, anatomy of individual organs. Okay, moving on to the next slide. In this slide we'll be studying about the layers of the abdomen. Layers of the abdominal wall. The first layer is the skin, then we have superficial fascia, then we have the muscles, then we have a fascia which is named region wise. So in the abdomen, this is named as transversalis fascia or fascia transversalis. Okay, beneath this, we have extra peritoneum which lies above the peritoneum. All right. Okay. So these were the layers of the abdominal wall. See, you can see this is the skin. All right. This is the superficial fascia. Superficial fascia of the abdomen is divided into two layers below the level of the umbilicus. All right. Superficial fatty layer. All right. And deep membranous layer. All right. This superficial fatty layer is known as Camper's fascia, and the deep membranous layer is known as fascia of Scarpa. ठीक है? Now, this superficial fatty layer in the scrotum, it is replaced by a muscle which is known as Dartos muscle. See, if this is the scrotum, if this is the skin, outermost layer is the skin, below the skin we don't have superficial fascia. Instead, this superficial fascia is replaced by a muscle called as Dartos muscle. So they can ask this question in the exam. Okay, now the membranous layer is the scarpa. Similarly, the superficial membranous layer of the perineum is called as Colles fascia. What do we call this? Colles fascia. Important. Then they will ask you in the exams. Okay. Similarly, the deep membranous layer, sorry, deep fascia of the perineum. What do we call this fascia as? It is called as Gelaudit's fascia. Gallaudet. Okay, Gallaudet fascia. All right. Now, similarly, deep fascia of thigh is known as fascia lata, and deep fascia of penis is called as bucks fascia. Okay. Now, there is a fascia which is covering the rectovesical pouch, that is between the prostate and the rectum. This fascia is called as fascia of Denon Willers. Okay. And the fascia, the condensed fascia that lies behind the rectum, this fascia is called as Waldeyer's fascia. What do we call this? Waldeyer's fascia. Okay. Then the fascia covering the eyeball. This is the eyeball, is called as Fascia bulbi. What do we call bulb? है ना ये eyeball. So we call this as fascia bulbi. Okay, and this fascia is also called as tenon's capsule. Tenon's capsule. ठीक है. Now the fascia that is covering the kidney and adrenal glands. This is the kidney and this is the adrenal glands, it is suprarenal gland. So the fascia covering the kidney and adrenal gland, it is called as fascia of Gerota's fascia. See, in some books it has given that kidney is covered by the fascia of the kidney has two layers. Okay, one is the anteriorly, this is Gerard's fascia, and the posterior layer is called as fascia of Zucker candle, that is Zucker Zucker candle. ठीक है. But in some books, it is mentioned that Gerotis fascia is only divided into two layers. The posterior one is the Zucker candle, but the anterior one is the tall fascia. ठीक है. Gerard's fascia, the anterior one is the tall fascia, and the posterior is the Zucker candle. Whereas in BD Chaurasya, you can see that this superficial layer itself is the Gerard's fascia, and the deep layer is the Zucker candle. Okay. Okay, there are two things which can confuse you. First thing is, see, this superficial fascia of the perineum is the Colles fascia, whereas इसमें E है, whereas the deep cervical fascia is called Colli fascia, Colli. What is this? This is deep cervical fascia. ठीक है. One more important thing. If they ask you Valder's fascia, then it is behind the rectum. All right, the condensed fascia behind the rectum. But if the question is Valder's ring, then it is in the neck. You have many lymphoid tissues like tonsils and all that, so that is a separate thing, but remember that this is in the neck. So don't get confused between the Valder's fascia and Valder's ring. Similarly, please don't get confused with Colles fascia and Colli fascia. All right, most we have covered most of the important fascias here. Okay, now the next layer here is the muscle. Now, in this slide, we'll be discussing about the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. Second pen. Muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. Totally, we have six muscles, out of which four muscles are large and they're quite important. The first muscle here, the first flat muscle, you can see this is the flat muscle lying in front of the abdomen. This muscle is called as rectus. Rectus means flat. Rectus abdominis. All right. Similarly, laterally here, you can see the oblique muscle fibers. Okay, the external most one, that is the external muscle which is arranged obliquely, this is called as external oblique. All right, when we remove external oblique muscle, the second muscle which is arranged in the similar fashion obliquely is called as internal oblique. Okay, this is internal, that is why it is internal oblique. That is external, that's why it is external oblique. When we remove internal oblique, there are few muscle fibers that are arranged transversely. So that muscle is transversus abdominis. ठीक है. Now, all these muscle, they decussate in the middle, forming a median band here, this white color band. This is called as linea alba. All right. Why do we call this as linea alba? Because linea means white, alba means, sorry, linea means line and alba is white. Okay. Now, the rectus abdominis muscle is enclosed within a sheath which is called as rectus sheath. You can see the sheath here, white colored sheath. Okay. So, what is rectus sheath? It is the covering of the rectus abdominis muscle. Okay. Apart from rectus abdominis muscle, one more muscle, pyramidalis muscle, also is also present in the rectus sheath, but the chief muscle which is present in the rectus sheath is the rectus abdominis. ठीक है? See, rectus abdominis, it extends from the pubic tubercle here to the xiphoid process. All right. Now this rectus sheath has anterior and posterior layers. Anterior layer is completely covered from the pubic tubercle to the xiphoid process, whereas posteriorly, this rectus sheath ends midway between the umbilicus and the pubic symphysis, somewhere here. Okay, this line is called as linea semicircularis. Semicircularis. Okay, and this line is also called as arcuate line. This line is also called as line of Douglas. ठीक है? Posteriorly, rectus sheath ends, terminates at arcuate line, also called as, this is the arcuate line, also called as linea semicircularis, and the line of Douglas. Please don't get confused with the line of Douglas and pouch of Douglas. Pouch of Douglas is a different entity, which is the rectovesical pouch, which I'll be explaining in the successive slides. All right. Now, moving on to the next slide. Say, after the muscular layer, we have transversalis fascia. This transversalis fascia, as I told you, it is named region wise. See, when it covers the transversalis muscle, it is called as the transversalis fascia. All right. Say, है ना, transversalis fascia. देखिए ये muscle के बाद you have, this is the transversalis fascia, but in the pelvic region it is called as the pelvic fascia. When it covers the diaphragm, it is called diaphragmatic fascia. Okay, in the lumbar region, it is called lumbar fascia. So, region wise, it is named. Okay, then we have the extra peritoneum and then the peritoneum. So, okay, so we'll study the peritoneum in the next slide. Yes, coming to peritoneum. ठीक है? See, the word peri means around. ठीक है? Antonium means to stretch. So, what is peritoneum? Peritoneum is a layer that is surrounding or that is covering around or that is stretching over the abdominal cavity. You can see this is the peritoneum. देखो, see, peri means around. Similarly, we have periosteum, means the layer covering the bone, around the bone. Similarly, we have pericardium, that is around the heart. Perichondrium. All right. So, इसी तरह the covering which is covering the abdominal cavity, it is called as peritoneum. This is a serous membrane surrounded by mesothelial cells. So, this serous membrane will definitely secrete a serous fluid which is called as peritoneal fluid. All right. Now, this peritoneum is divided into two parts. One is the parietal peritoneum, and the second is the visceral peritoneum. ठीक है? What is parietal peritoneum? It is the layer that lines the inner surface of the abdomen. One second. Okay. Yes. So what is yes. So what is parietal peritoneum? It is the layer that is surrounding the, this is the parietal peritoneum. Okay, the layer inner surface of the abdomen is lined by parietal peritoneum. So this is the parietal peritoneum. Okay. Now visceral peritoneum is the one that lines the outer surface of the viscera. Viscera means organs. So the covering which is covering the organs. Okay, this is the visceral peritoneum. ठीक है. Visceral peritoneum. Now some organs, they are completely covered by the peritoneum. See, if this is the organ, it is completely covered by the peritoneum. Such organs are called as intraperitoneal organs. All right. Similarly, we have few organs, some organs which are partially covered by the peritoneum. Only they are covered at the posterior side, only at one side. Okay, they lie here. Okay, posteriorly they are covered by the peritoneum. Such organs are called as the retroperitoneal organs. ठीक है? They will ask you in the exam, for example, which among the following is a retroperitoneal organ? Which among the following is an intraperitoneal organ? Okay. So in this slide, we'll be studying about the intraperitoneal and retroperitoneal organs. ठीक है? Hmm. Retroperitoneal organs. See, you can see these are the retroperitoneal organs. You can see here we have the suprarenal gland or the adrenal gland. Okay, this is the kidney. Okay, then you have the ureters, the aorta in the red color, IVC, that is the inferior vena cava, in the blue color, the ascending colon here, then here we have the descending colon, here we have the esophagus. So all these structures, they are retroperitoneal organs. There is a very famous mnemonic to remember the retroperitoneal organs. What is that? Sad pucker. Okay. S stands for suprarenal glands or the adrenal glands. ठीक है? Suprarenal gland. Okay. Then you have the aorta and IVC, that is inferior vena cava. Then duodenum. See, duodenum is a C-shaped structure. This is the first part, second part, third part, and fourth part. The first part of the duodenum is intraperitoneal, whereas the second, third, and fourth part is retroperitoneal. To be very specific, it is the second, third, and fourth part. The entire duodenum is retroperitoneal except for the first part. All right. Next, it is the pancreas, that is the tail of the pancreas to be specific, is retroperitoneal. U for ureter, then C for colon. Which part of the colon? The ascending colon and the descending colon. Ascending and descending colon. All right. Then the kidneys, as I showed you, esophagus and the rectum. Okay. The rest of the organs are intraperitoneal. So, what are the organs left? इसोफेगस के बाद क्या है? स्टमक, फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ ड्यूडेनम, the jejunum, ileum, okay. Then we have the cecum, appendix, all right. Then the colon में we have the transverse colon because ascending and descending colons are retroperitoneal, okay. Then we have the sigmoid colon, all right. Apart from this, we have the liver, the pancreas, except for the tail, then the gallbladder, the spleen, ovaries, all these are intraperitoneal. Even if you can remember just retroperitoneal organs, you can exclude the option. All right, moving on to the next slide. Yes. In this slide, we'll be studying about the important peritoneal folds. There are various peritoneal folds, out of which two folds are very important. One is the greater omentum and the other is the lesser omentum. Now, see, the entire peritoneal cavity is divided into two sacs. One is the greater sac here, and this is the lesser sac. All right. There is a communication between the greater sac and the lesser sac. That is the communication between the greater omentum and the lesser omentum through a foramen. Okay, this foramen here, which communicates between the greater and lesser omentum, is called as, sorry, foramen of Winslow. All right. This foramen is also called as epiploic foramen, and this foramen is also called as foramen of Adytus. All right. Now, this is the greater omentum which extends from the greater curvature of the stomach. This is the greater curvature of the stomach, and this is the lesser curvature of the stomach. So the omentum that extends from the greater curvature of the stomach is the greater omentum. You can see this is an apron like structure hanging down from the greater curvature of the stomach, covering the intestines and so on. All right. There are dense macrophages, they form dense patchy milky spots, okay. These are the milky spots formed by the macrophages. So we must also know that basically the peritoneum, if the it provides the protection of the viscera. How it protects the viscera? How? Because the peritoneum, it contains various phagocytic cells. Okay, they guard against infection, and the lymphocytes which are present in the normal peritoneal fluid, it provides cellular and humoral immunological defense mechanism. So that is why this limit the spread of infection, okay. So that is why this greater omentum is called as policeman of the abdomen. Which structure is called as the policeman of the abdomen? It is the greater omentum, and this greater omentum has four parts, okay. Greater omentum has four parts, but those parts are not very important for examination point of view. All right. Now, apart from protecting the viscera, one more important function of the peritoneum is it helps in movement of the organs, because the peritoneal fluid which is secreted, it provides slippery surface so that the organs can move easily. In case if you don't have peritoneal fluid, then the organs, they become adherent to each other and they can't move easily. All right. Now, this was about the greater omentum. So this was the lesser omentum which was extending from the lesser curvature of the stomach. This lesser omentum is divided into two parts. One is the hepatogastric ligament and the other is the hepatoduodenal ligament. Greater omentum has two parts. One is the hepatogastric ligament, and the other is the hepatoduodenal ligament. All right. Hepatogastric, liver से stomach तक. Hepatoduodenal, liver to duodenum. Now, why am I stressing so much here? Because this hepatoduodenal ligament is important. Why? Because important triad called portal triad. We have three structures in the portal triad. They lie in the hepatoduodenal ligament itself. It's very important in the surgery. We'll study about the Pringle's maneuver, that is total occlusion of the hepatic artery and portal vein. So, for this, it is very important for the surgeons to recognize the structures in the portal triad. So, what are the structures that come under portal triad? How to remember them? BPH. Okay. B for bile duct, P for portal vein, and H for hepatic artery. These are the three structures that lie within the portal triad, and portal triad lies in the hepatoduodenal ligament. All right, moving on to the next slide. Now, here in this particular slide, we'll be studying about the special regions of the peritoneal cavity. We have few special regions of the peritoneal cavity. We have few special regions, among which two regions are very, very important. One is the hepatorenal recess or the hepatorenal pouch. Here you can see below the what do you call liver here. This is called as subhepatic space. Right subhepatic space, also called as hepatorenal space. Hepatorenal space. This space is also called as pouch of Morrison. Now, why is this so important? Because this is the most dependent in the sense the most lowest part of the abdominal cavity in the supine position. Now, what if it is the most dependent part? What happens in case if there is fluid collection or pus collection here in the peritoneum, then it will definitely collect here because it is the most lowest part. So, while doing paracentesis and all, that is removal of this fluid. So, that is why this is important. This is called pouch of Morrison. Okay? Right subhepatic space or the hepatorenal space, which is the most dependent part of the abdominal cavity. Similarly, here we have one more pouch. This is called as the rectovesical pouch. Rectovesical pouch in males and rectouterine pouch in case of females. This pouch is also called as pouch of Douglas. Though don't get confused between the line of Douglas, which is different, arcuate line. This is the pouch of Douglas. All right. So this is the most dependent part of the peritoneal cavity. You can see it is very easily visualized in this picture here. Okay, we can see fluid tends to collect here. Okay, so thank you. In the next class, we'll be discussing about the diaphragm. All right. After then, we'll be having integrated sessions organ wise, which means in one lecture itself, you will be studying the anat, physio, surgery, and pathology of that particular organ, so that it will be easy for you to prepare for the exams anyhow. Thank you.